Hello everyone and welcome back to our Basics of Network Configuration series. And today we're going to be taking a look at security and firewall configurations. Security and firewall configurations are very important within our network to ensure that we stay secure, that the traffic leaving and entering our network remain safe and secure, right? So we're going to be taking a look at a few things like access control, encryption, and securing our devices and our network. And the things that we're going to be looking at in today's video would include access list and IP access groups, VTY lines, account lockout, SSH and SSH versions, username and passwords, AAA, VPN, IPsec, and types of VPN, firewall policies, web and DNS filtering, antivirus, anti-malware traffic inspection as well. So we're not going to look at every single thing in detail. Some of them I'll just do an explanation, and the others we're going to go in depth and see how it's configured on the device. So let's get straight into the video. My name is Kenneth and let's get started. Okay, so I've made my web browser a little bit smaller so that I can have this on the side to show us what we're going to be looking at. So we're going to be using two devices in today's video. We're going to be using my FortiGate firewall, my secondary C firewall. And we're also going to be using some devices in my Cisco packet tracer to take a look at a few other configurations. Now for the FortiGate, we're going to be taking a look at these few configurations, and then for the Cisco we're going to be looking at these ones right here. So let's get started and log into our FortiGate device to see what we need to do. Now on my FortiGate device, I've not done so much. I've not done a lot of configuration on the FortiGate device. I've basically done the administrative settings, how to log in, signing in, and then also configured like 3 ports, right? 2 LAN ports and one WAN port just to start out. So we'll take a look at those configurations quickly and then we'll get straight into the first thing that we need to configure. So here I've configured the management port to enable me log into the device and manage it. And then I've configured 2 LAN ports that we're going to be using in the video today. So one is 100.1 and the other one is 101.1, right? And then we have a WAN port as well that has been configured to a fictitious service provider called Internet Owners, and this is their radio connection to our company, right? So let's get started. We're going to look at the very first thing, which is firewall policies. Now, what are firewall policies? Firewall policies are policies that define how traffic flows in and out of our network, right? So in every network, there are policies that define how traffic gets into your network and how traffic leaves and how traffic moves within your network. For instance, if you had multiple LANs within your network and you wanted some LANs to communicate with some and some others not to communicate with some other LANs, you would use firewall policies to do that. Firewall policies would be similar to what you would call access lists your in Cisco devices, right? Since access lists permit you access to certain devices or certain networks and deny you access to some other networks. So that's what firewall policies are. So we're going to be taking a look at how to configure a firewall policy. Now, on a FortiGate device, to configure firewall policies, what you need to know is when you navigate to your policies and objects, as we see right here, and we go to IPv4 policy. So you see that we have already one implicit deny policy. Now, there's always an implicit deny policy. It's a policy that says that every traffic is denied. So at this point, you can't send traffic within this network or outside the network, right? So this implicit deny says from all sources to all destinations, all schedules, always, all services deny, right? This firewall policy helps uh, to deny all traffic within your network as long as no explicit rule is found to allow that traffic. So if there's no explicit rule here that says allow such and such traffic, when it gets here, it's going to deny that traffic. So let's see what that looks like. For instance, if we want to allow one of our LANs access to the internet, this is how we'll do it within our IPv4 policy. So we'll go to create new, and it's going to give us this dialog screen to fill out the information that allow we need to give that LAN access. Now, what we need to do is give the policy a name. So we would say, for instance, let's say we want to allow LAN 1, right? So we say LAN 1, 2, and this one is going to the internet, right? So internet. So you need to give it a name that makes sense, right? So that when another administrator sees it, they know what actually is going on. Now, the incoming interface, where is this traffic coming in from? This traffic is coming in from LAN 1, obviously. So we select that, and it is going out to where do we want the traffic to go to? Now, the traffic is going to our WAN interface, which is our internet owners, right? Now, this is where it's going to. Now, what source? For now, we'll say that we have all sources. Now, if we had a group of IP addresses, a group of users, or a group of devices, we could select this. But for now, we'll say all sources, right? Within this subnet, obviously, within this LAN, obviously, that's this LAN. Now, we'll say destination or, and then we'll say schedule is always scheduled. Now we'll now look at the services. We'll permit all services. If you wanted to permit a specific service, say email, ping, file transfer, that is FTP. Let's say you want to permit SSH and things like that. This is where you will select it. But for now, we are selecting all of the services. So we click on all, and then if this was an actual one link where our service provider has given us a public IP address. Obviously, we are not going to use our public IP address that way to go out to the internet. So we have to NAT it, right? So we would select here to NAT that public IP address. So as it's going out, it's going to be NATed out of the uh, external port or global port, right? So that is what this is for. And then we're going to be taking a look at these ones later in the video. Now that we've done this, we can come here and click on OK, right? So once we've clicked on OK, we would see that this is added as a policy here. So it's going to show that we're having source for all, destination is all, we're scheduling always, we have services, and we have the action is accept. And you can see that this is going out from LAN 1 to the internet, and then any IP or any group of network that does not belong to LAN 1 is going to, and it doesn't find its own policy in this list of policies, is going to deny that traffic access. So if any traffic comes in and is going to the internet and it looks for the policy here that is specifying that traffic, allowing that traffic to go out to the internet, and it doesn't find it, it's going to block that traffic automatically. So that's for IPv4 policies. Now, next we have what we're going to be taking a look at web and DNS filters, right? So what are web and DNS filters? Web and DNS filters your traffic that is going out to the internet or that is coming in to ensure that you're not allowing any content that you don't want within your network, right? So let's go into that and we'll see what it looks like. So if we go to security profiles and we'll first look at web filters, right? Now, this FortiGate device is not licensed, right? So we might not have, even if we set up the web filter, it might not work, or it might block or disable all the traffic entirely. So, but we're not testing that at the moment, so we'll just leave it out, right? So this is what the web filter screen looks like, right? So you have to create a new one. As we can see here, we have two web filters, right? So we're going to create our one, create, and then we're going to give it a meaningful name, right? We're going to say um, web, we're going to name it LAN to internet. let's be consistent with the name that we started with, right? So we're going to say LAN to internet filter. Let's just put the web here, right? LAN to internet web filter, right? In the comments, you can give it a meaningful comment that explains what you're trying to do with this filter, right? So basically, we're trying to filter out traffic that is going out and coming into our network. Now, if within our network, if someone tried to visit something that we are not, that our organization or our business does not permit, this is how we would filter out that traffic. For instance, if you wanted to filter out things like security risk, things that are bandwidth consuming, if someone is streaming YouTube in the office all day, streaming Netflix in the office all day, adult content as well. Someone is trying to visit adult sites within the organization. You can filter out all those things here, right? Bandwidth consuming, you click on it. Security risk, things that are risky to, let's say, deep dark websites and things like that. Things like that. So things are other sites that may be risky for your network, right? You can select all of those here. There uh, all of those things here and block them, right? Once you've selected all of them, you can click on OK, right? You can restrict YouTube access as well. There are so many things that you can restrict, right? So what web filter does is to restrict access to certain URLs. So it filters by the fully qualified domain name, the FQDN, and restricts access to that website uh, for you. So this would help your network to be more efficient, faster, and also secure, right? So by the time you've selected all of this, you click on OK. But this is not where it ends. Once you've clicked on OK, it's not where it ends, right? You have to go and apply it in your firewall policy, right? So how you do that is by, okay, let's check out the name. Now this is the name, LAN to internet web filter, right? Now let's go to our policies. When you go to your policy, to enable it within your policy, the web filter that we just created, to enable it within your policy, your firewall policy, you have to go to antivirus. What we did was web filter and select the one you just created. After you've enabled it, you select the one you created, right? LAN to internet web filter. You click it and it's been enabled and you click OK. Now, once you've clicked OK, you'll see that the security profiles that you have here, there's a web filter, right? And the name is written right there. Now, the same way you assign web filters is the same way you assign DNS filter. So if you go to DNS filter, I know you might be asking what's the difference between a web filter and a DNS filter, right? Since we are going to enter the address anyway. DNS filter stops it from the onset. So the resolution is not even done, right? The resolution of the IP to domain name is not even done when it's trying to figure out where that website resides on the internet. The DNS filter catches it at that moment and filters it from the onset. So a connection is not even established with a DNS filter. While in the web filter, a web filter uses the FQDN to filter out that content or that traffic, right? A connection may have been established already. When it finds out that this is the kind of site this is, it filters that out, although the user wouldn't even see this process. It's just going to see a message on the screen that such and such is not allowed within their network. Please contact your administrator, right? So for a DNS filter, you also give it a meaningful name. This is the default one. We have to create ours. So if we create our one, we'll give it a meaningful name right here. Once we've given it a meaningful name, you can give it a comment, right? And then you can select the type of content you are looking to filter out and then click on OK, right? Once you've clicked on OK, you go back to your policies and objects, select your policy and enable the DNS filter and select the one we've created. At this point, we just have the default one, right? I could select that. But if you have created multiple DNS filters. You're going to see them right here, and you'll be able to select the one you want. Now we have an antivirus filter as well, which works, an antivirus rather, which works in the same manner, but antiviruses use licenses, right? So you have to, your device has to be licensed, right? Because antivirus obviously works with a database which has to be, updated by the OEM. So you have to ensure that your device is licensed for that. But you can enable it if you have created an antivirus and then select the AV you've created. If we've created this one and select it and we click on OK, you'll see that we have in our security profiles for this policy, we've enabled antivirus, we've enabled web filters, we've enabled DNS as well. So this is how to do the web DNS filters, the antivirus or anti-malware inspection. This is how to do it. So taking a look at the antivirus one, it's pretty much straightforward. You just give it a name, right? And tell it what to inspect. So if you're trying to inspect HTTP connections, SMTP connections, POP3 IMAP, MAPI, and file transfer protocols, you can block them, you can monitor them, or do whatsoever you want with that kind of traffic within your network, right? So it's pretty much straightforward. Now, the next thing we're going to be looking at is session timeout. Session timeout helps your device itself to be secure. So if an administrator was working within the dashboard and suddenly walks off his seat to get a drink or get water or whatever it is, or gets called into an emergency, the device would automatically time out within a couple of minutes, right? If it was the command line, if it was the GUI, it would time out within a couple of minutes. So this is where you would achieve that. So you go to system and go to settings. Within your settings, you'll find the idle timeout. So if the system remains idle for this is a minute, for 5 minutes, it's going to automatically lock the GUI or the CLI, whichever one it is, and then have you log in again when next you want to continue whatever it is you were doing, right? So that's it for um, the timeout. And then we have the AAA. So for this one, I will not be showing you how to configure the AAA entirely because I don't have a AAA server set up, but we can take a look at what that looks like right here. Now for the AAA, we can go to users and device and scroll all the way down to reduce servers, and here we can create a server. So we can use this server to authenticate users who are trying to get into our device. Let's say either getting into the device to manage the device or getting into the device to access something else on the network. Let's say we have on-premise servers like file servers, on-premise VoIP servers, and things like this. If we wanted to grant our users secure access to that, we could use our reduce server. We create a reduce server, and this reduce server would store users information like usernames, password, and their authentication details, right? And authorization details as well, what they need to be accessing within our network, right? So this would be where you would have to connect your server and make sure everything is set up correctly. I would be doing a video on this once I have my server set up as well. Now, the next thing we're going to be looking at, and the last thing we're going to be looking at for the FortiGate one, is VPN, right? So VPN would enable you connect securely between two sites, right? If you had two sites that you need to connect, maybe one site is the main site and you have a branch site elsewhere that needs to connect to the main site to access maybe a file server, email server, a, a VoIP server, or whatever it is. So you will need a VPN setup between your two sites, right? To set up a VPN, what you need to do is come to this VPN section and click on IPsec tunnels. Now, to create it, you go to create new. Now, there are two main types of VPNs, right? The site-to-site and the remote access VPN. Now, the site-to-site is when you're connecting a main site to a remote site, right? As you can see on this drawing already, it shows you that this is our current site. That's this current FortiGate that I'm on. And you have the internet that we are obviously connected to the internet using our fictitious service provider internet owners, right? So connecting to the internet, whether it's by cable, by radio, whatever connection it is. And your remote site should also be connected to the internet irrespective of the service provider. It might not even be the same service provider, right? And they can be anywhere in the world, right? Connecting this to the internet, be it via cable or radio as well. And let's say for this one, they are using a remote FortiGate device as well. They're using a FortiGate device. So if it was another device, you could select a Cisco device and it would change to that, right? So that's for a site-to-site connection. Now for a remote access VPN is for when users are trying to get into your network to connect to some service. Let's say they are trying to connect to a Windows server, they're trying to connect to a VoIP server, a file server, or whatever that you hosted on premise within your network, right? So they would connect to the internet with their device, Android, iOS, um, Windows, whatever device it is that they have. They connect to the internet, but they have to have a VPN client, right? Set up on their device. And that VPN client would help them to connect to your um, internet, your network, and access whatever resource it is they want to access. So those are the two main types. Now, if we continued here, we could give it site to site. Let's say we have a site called, um, let's say we're trying to connect main to, let's say, remote, right? Let's say we are connecting our main site to our remote site, right? NAT configuration, no NAT between sites. It's always good to NAT uh, between your networks, right? So just NAT because your IPs there might be conflict within your IPs at your on both sides. So it's always good to say that one side is behind a NAT. So next, we're going to say the remote device IP address, right? So you're going to put in the IP address of the remote site. The outgoing interface is your own interface. Now, my outgoing interface would be my internet interface, right? If I had multiple internet interfaces, I'd have to select one, right? Then you have pre-shared key or signature. If you had a pre-shared key, that is like a password, so you type it in, right? Whatever the password is, you had a signature, you'd have to um, add the certificate and all of that. But for now, I'll just put in pre-shared key and IP address. Let's say the remote IP address is 200.187.65.34, right? So this is the public IP address of the remote site, right? I just put that in and then go to next. And then local interface, right? So my local interface is the interface that I want, let's say the resources that are on my interface, on my network that I want my remote users to be able to access. So the local interface would have, I could select, let's say one, and then the subnets that I want them to be able to access would auto populate, and then remote subnets as well. If there are remote networks that I want to access on the remote side, that is on this side, I'll also put it in there. Let's say Control C, I'll say 100. Now the remote subnet as well are the subnet on the remote side, that is on this side that I want to access. So once I've done this, I'll go ahead and create this VPN tunnel. And once I've created this VPN tunnel, you'll see that it comes up here, right? And then if I show tunnel lists, you'll see my tunnel list. It's currently inactive, right? Because the other side is offline, right? If the other side came online and the two of them negotiate, they exchange the pre-shared key and everything is accepted, you see that this will change from inactive to active. And now I can send traffic between my remote site and my branch, my main office and my remote site. So that is basically how you would set up your VPN tunnel. So we'll be moving on to the next thing where we'll be looking at how to configure some of these things on our Cisco device. Okay, for the remaining part of the video that we're going to be doing on the Cisco device, we're going to be configuring access lists and access groups. We're going to be configuring our VTY lines. We're going to be configuring the session timeout, SSH version, and username and passwords. Some of these configurations we've done in our previous videos, but we'll just go through them again to, reinforce our understanding on them. So I have a very basic network here that I've done within Packet Tracer. On the left, I have a LAN, and on the right, I have another LAN that has a web server and a PC on it, and I have a router connecting both LANs, right? So the thing here is that everything has been configured to work, just connectivity works within the network. So everything pings, every other device, every IP is reachable, all the networks are reachable. So I'll just try maybe one or two pings just to show you that everything works. So on PC1, if I go to the CMD on PC1 and go to desktop and command prompt, I do ping 192.168. So let me ping the web server .2.2, and yeah, we see that that works. So that works. I would ping the other computer as well to just show you that everything works. So this works as well. So that works as well. So I would visit the website. I've enabled the HTTP on the web server. I'll visit the site just to see that everything works before we go into our IP access list configuration. I don't know why my packet tracer has been laggy since I started it. So I'll just pause the recording and come back when this is opened. Okay, that actually took some time. So I'll go here and type in the IP address of I'll just type in the DNS, the domain name, webserver.com, and go. And let's see if we're able to see that site come up. All right, the site is working, everything works. Now let's get to the IP access list setting or configuration rather. So now what we're going to be configuring is we're going to try to deny PC1 access to the web server on 192.168.2.2. We're going to deny only PC1 while allowing PC2 to still access the server, right? So to do that, we'll need to configure an access list on our router 0. So we'll go into our router in the CLI, and then would navigate to, would make those configurations here, right? So to do this, we'll go to the configuration mode which we are currently in. So once we've come into our CLI, and then we'll be able to configure the access list, right? So to configure the access list, we're going to say access list 101, which is the name of the access list, and we're telling it to deny, right, the TCP traffic of from host 192.168.1.2, and that this traffic is going to the host, right? We're saying that this traffic is going to the host, the web server 192.168.2.2, right? And that we're looking at port 80, right? Now we've denied the traffic going to port 80. Now let's deny the one going to port 443 as well. So we'll just leave the command as it is, but change the port to 443, which is HTTPS, right? Now we'll now do the permit any. So we'll say access list 101, and we'll tell it to permit IP. Right, so we've done our deny statement, and we're telling it to, if you don't find any other, access list entry for this traffic, now you have to go to the last one, which is access list 101 permit IP any. So now that we've finished this access list configuration, we have to go to the port we want this access list to take effect, and that will be our interface, which is this interface right here, right? So we'll go to interface gigabit 0/0, and then we'll say IP access group 101, right? And would say that it is going in. Now the access list and access group configuration is complete. So let's try to test this out. So what we've done in our configuration is basically deny this PC1 access to the web server. Now, if we try to visit this web server from here, we're not supposed to be able to reach it again. So we'll do this. We'll go into PC1. Please bear with me, my packet tracer has been laggy. So we'll go into PC1 and go into our web server, our web browser rather, to try to access this website on the other LAN. All right, now that the web browser has come up. Okay, now that the web browser has come up, let's try to visit our web server.com, and we'll click on go. We'll see that it's not gonna load. It's going to take a whole lot of time, and yet it won't load the web browser because that IP access list is avoiding it from loading the web browser. Now let's try on this one, because we only did that configuration for this device, right? So if we try this one, now we can see that PC1 has failed to load the website. It has said request timed out, right? If we try to load the same website from PC2 and we click on go, we'll give it a while to do the DNS resolutions and load, and then we'll see that the website will be loaded on the screen, right? So the website has successfully been loaded on the screen. So access lists are similar to what we have in our firewall policies, right? That help us, decide what traffic is sent to what location, right? So we can use this to also define what traffic would leave our network to other parts of the network as well. So let's go back to what we have to do. So that's for access lists and IP access groups. Another one is VTY lines. Yes, so VTY lines are basically how we log into our devices to manage them. That is typically through SSH, right? So we can configure how many VTY lines that we want to be operational concurrently, and how they can be accessed and what type of service is going to be used on them. To do this, we need to go to our configuration mode, and then what we need to do is look at line VTY 0 to let's say 15, right? If we want to have 16 virtual lines on our device, but I'll just use 4, line VTY 0 to 4, and we'll tell this these lines that if someone wanted to log in, make sure the person log in, right? I need to create a password, right? So I would say I can and exit and create a username, Cisco password, Cisco, and by the time I go back, I would say line VTY 0 to 4, login local, right? So it's going to use the username and password that I've created to log in, and we're going to tell it to use SSH, right? Transport input SSH, right? It's going to use SSH instead of the unsecure telnet to try to have the users log in, right? So that's for VTY lines. Now for session, let's do SSH versions first. So to ensure that you're using SSH version, you need to do your IP domain configuration, and then you'd go to your SSH configuration and say SSH version 2. So typically, to do this, we'll need to exit and do IP domain. That should be IP hyphen IP. Now we've given it IP domain name, right? Would oh yeah, I have to define my host name. Host name RT1, RT1, and then I'll say crypto keys generate RSA 1024. It's generated the keys, and then I'll say IP SSH version 2. Now IPSSH version 2 has been enabled on this device, so you need to give it a host name, you need to give it a domain name, and then you need to generate your crypto keys, and then before you enable your SSH version 2, which is the secure version of the SSH. Now session timeout. A session timeout is how long your CLI will be idle until it logs out. So if I stop typing for, let's say, 5 minutes, I'll need the CLI to time out, right? And lock, so that it's a security feature as well, so that if I leave my table mistakenly or called away by an emergency, the system logs me out. So I could do exec, no, exec timeout, right? That should be exit. If we do that from here, exec. So for the session timeout times you out when you've been idle on the CLI for a while. So if you get called away from your table for some reason and your CLI is still running, after being idle for a specific amount of time, it's supposed to time you out. This is a security feature that allows your CLI to keep itself safe and secure as well. So if you want to configure this, you typically configure it on the console or on the VTY lines. So the way to do this is to go to your line VTY 0 to 4, right? And then I'll say exec timeout. And if I put a question mark, it's going to say timeout in minutes, meaning it's going to collect the whatever figure I put here would be in minutes. So if I say 2 minutes, that means after 2 minutes, my command line, after 2 minutes of idle time, my command line will be timed out and it would lock and have me authenticate back in when next I want to run a command. So I'll click on 2 minutes and that is it. Now, the last one we're going to be looking at is username and password, which I've already done here without explaining it. For username and password, tells you who would be logging into the device to manage the device, right? That is their username and password. So to do this, you go into your configuration mode and you type in username, you put in the person's username, and then you put in the password as well, password, and then you click on enter. So that is how to configure that one, right? And this is a local username and password. So each time you're using it, you're going to have to say login local, meaning that you use the local repository of usernames and password to authenticate users, right? So these are the few key things that you typically find uh, to secure your device. Or there's so much more, yeah, but these are the basic ones that you would find, right? So there's so much more. Even this antivirus and anti-malware, web DNS, you can configure some of these things on your Cisco device as well, right? So, but these are the basic configurations that would find. So, as usual, thank you so much for watching, and do like, subscribe, reshare, and consider subscribing on the channel so that you know when next I upload videos. Thank you so much for watching, and see you on the next one.